Devonte Adams. What an interesting and sad, right, turn that things have taken there for the Raiders organization and him. I think we've both seen some of the reasons why. Like, I think there's plenty of videos out there showing, him being wide open and not people can't hit him, all those kind of things, and taking big hits, and just nothing really working there. So I think I'm curious what your thoughts are on where you can see him going now that he has said he would rather be traded than to continue playing with Raiders. So there's kind of two questions there. Number one, do you think that he will play another game with the Raiders? And then B, if the answer is no, where do you see him potentially going?
Yeah, so it does feel like he's going to be done with the Raiders as of now. I think he's even got like a minor injury listing that they're using to not play. While looking at all this, I did hear he does not have a no trade clause, so he has bullying ability to affect this, but he doesn't have just like he can't just sign a piece of paper, push a button. He can just say, it's like, hey, by the way, whoever, doesn't really matter. The Houston Texans, I was like, I don't really want to play there, no respect, but if you trade for me, I will not play for you. So that he can do that, and that is something that players are willing to do on occasion. But it doesn't seem like he doesn't have maybe a history doing that, and I think there will be enough suitors that the Raiders will work with him to some degree. The teams that he has apparently come out and said, hey, this sounds kind of nice, makes some sense. But we'll see. So, a couple of the ones I've heard are the ones that get mentioned over and over again is the Jets. So people talk about the Saints, which I find a little odd because they're always in kind of cap hell, and he's not going to help with that. He is a very expensive wide receiver, so how they'd make that fit is be some New Orleans Saints voodoo. But going back and playing with Derek Carr again, that's kind of the reason he went to the Raiders. It worked so well there. I don't think the Saints is going to happen. But the Jets are an interesting one, of course. Going and playing with Aaron Rodgers again, giving him a weapon. He really likes Garrett Wilson, but giving him another one that is tried and true, and he's had incredible seasons with repeatedly, makes some sense. And it would, of course, help the Jets in a place where they need it. So I kind of like the idea, but seeing is believing. It's also interesting. Some people talk about the trade compensation. Yeah, maybe it's a second-round pick. I think there's also the option of sending Hassan Reddick, who has already said he doesn't want to be with the Jets because they're not going to pay him. Maybe they could offload that problem, and maybe the Raiders would be willing to pay him. They have space at edge rusher opposite Max Crosby. So that would be an interesting way of doing this. So anyways, what have you seen, or what do you think of interesting landing spots for him?
Yeah, I don't know how much I've seen per se, but there's a part of me that thinks wouldn't he look nice across from CeeDee Lamb? Like we also have plenty of cap challenges and all that, and it's also a question, obviously, of what the Raiders would want back in return. He's exciting to think about. Like, what a great compliment from a capability standpoint. He's a great person to add to your team. I will admit that there's a little bit of part of me that's worried about how bitter he maybe has become through his not great experience with the Raiders, and kind of what that's going to translate to on the next team. But if Dallas said, hey, we found a magic way to bring him over and all of that, I would probably be very excited about that. With that being said, back into the world of reality, there's places that probably would want a guy like him that, as you pointed out, he doesn't really have a clause to say you can't go there. A place like Denver that might think of that as a way to solve some challenges there, which I don't think they will. But I'm just thinking that it could get worse. As much as he is frustrated where he is, it could be worse elsewhere. I would think his ideal landing spot is the Jets. Let's go back to the guy who made your name. and let's see how that works out. I think Aaron would be incredibly happy to see him show up. I think that just makes his life easier. We're in a place where things aren't clicking smoothly yet. So I think that would be very interesting. Like you already pointed out, this great like pre-set up situation there for them to potentially go with. So the Jets would be fun. The Saints make a lot of sense to me. To me, they make a lot of sense. To see him down there with Derek seems weird, but everything else it just seems like that he would be a good compliment down there. I'd actually be very interested to see him on the Falcons, and see what that makes them. They've been more interesting than I kind of maybe thought they would be, but they've been very up and down. So I wonder if he would stabilize that offense a little bit and continue to kind of spread the strain on those key people that are already there. So the Falcons would be interesting. Again, I don't know any about their cap space or any of that, but I think that would be interesting if they could work it out. And I hate to say this one, but given their current plight, it seems like it would make some sense, at least short term, would be Philadelphia, who lost AJ Brown and just disappeared. Like they have no offense, and yes, there's Saquon Barkley, who went Super Saiyan on the last week and hold them out, or they would be one of the bottom teams in the NFL right now. And so they just have no real passing offense, and they don't seem to have anybody who's stepping up or heading in that direction. So I think Philadelphia would be a terrifying place for them to land. But I think it would, in the current state, I think it would make a lot of sense. I think he would fill in nicely for an AJ Brown in the short term. And then once AJ comes back, well, Dallas, get ready. It's going to be a long day. So I don't know. Those are the things that come to mind. What do you think about those? You have some other insights into those, or maybe potentially other ones?
Well, sorry, I do like those. The Eagles, I feel like that's a crowded room. I think they've already paid Devonte Smith,
Yep.
and I know they paid AJ Brown. So you're looking at a third wide receiver that's going to be paid, plus not the cheapest team around them. So I mean, they paid their quarterback. You're getting to a rather lopsided budget on your offense, and your defense is clearly a problem. So
Unless you trade one of those wide receivers,
yes,
unless you traded Devonta Smith out, because I mean the Raiders are going to need something, right, to replace what they just, I mean, Devonte Adams is like their offense, so um, they need something in return. I don't know how the contract stuff will work out, but you've got a good point. You're 100% right. I just wonder if that might not be the trade. Can you imagine Devonta Smith on that? Like, wait, what's going on?
what did I do?
Exactly. But yeah,
Yeah. No, and so yeah, some of those do make some sense. You're looking at like a team like there are a couple of teams that I think make some sense to want a player like Devonte Adams, like a Chiefs and a Chargers. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think either one of those things are going to get him. I still think divisional rivalry matters at least a tiny bit.
Yep.
And on
I
top
do
of
too.
that, again, the whole no trade clause means the team is gonna, they're gonna look at this and be like, yeah, we're not doing that. We'll just take the hit rather than watch Kansas City 3-peat. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's some interesting stuff there. Another team that has gotten thrown out some, and I kind of like the sound of it. I think is Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
have more
They're
cap
not
space than you might think over the course of the next couple of years. He's kind of got a tough culture background as far as football teams go.
mm-hmm.
The Raiders are supposed to be that. They've kind of gotten away from some of that, but then Green Bay, he really didn't miss much time. Like he just played and shut up and played. So like he's got some of that. I kind of like Pittsburgh for him. I don't know that a guy like Justin Fields is going to maximize what he can do, but he should make them better in a way that they need to get better. So I'd keep an eye on Pittsburgh, which would stink for you this week because he might play against the Cowboys. But
Right. Right.
other than that, there are just a couple of interesting ones. The Commanders are a kind of interesting one because what they
Mm-hmm.
have is working, but they have the kind of coaches and I believe management who are willing to go out and make a splash, try to capitalize on a situation. So I could see the Commanders happening, but it's probably not my first choice. Outside of that, you've got some teams that I kind of wish you could go to or talk to, like Baltimore. But I don't know that they have the cap space. They're very committed to a lot of other areas, so he would have to go there and just be like, "I'll play for nothing." And I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, there are some fun possibilities here. I still think the Jets are the favorite. Um,
Sure.
it's not
Yeah.
just because that team needs a wide receiver that matches his description. It's they need.
Yeah.
I mean, he's played with that quarterback. Their
Yeah.
offensive coordinator is Nathaniel Hackett. Where I think the last time he played with him in Green Bay, he had 17 touchdowns that year or something like that. So we're pretty confident that that style works with him. Yes, the NFL has changed somewhat since that time, but there's reason for some confidence there. So we'll see. It'll be
Yeah.
fun to see that unfold. He ain't going to Arizona. So let's just get that out of the way. Happily, I don't think he's going to the NFC West. The Rams are not in a good position to do something like that. The Niners, I think, are just overstacked, and Seattle already has two wide receivers that they really like, plus the third one they just took in their first round. So, yeah, we'll see. What do you think?
Well, I just one other one to throw out there is we were talking about him returning to teammates, and again, with how Aaron already picked up Lazard, really, right? And they brought him in, and Lazard has been effective in a way he hasn't been, to his capability. I think he's been pretty effective. So yeah, I still think that makes the most sense. But talking about returning to teammates, and maybe, in my opinion, the scariest idea would be him going to Minnesota, and go back and hang out with Aaron Jones. The idea of him across from Justin Jefferson is particularly scary, and I think Minnesota would have some pieces, some existing pieces to potentially offer the Raiders in return that would be interesting. They always have some defensive gems hidden in there, but I think they have other guys as well. It's just it kind of comes down to what they, and then he gets to go back and play against Green Bay directly, which I kind of wonder if wouldn't make him kind of happy. I don't know. I think that would be interesting. Again, I don't know their cap situation as much, but I think that's also a pretty interesting, would be very, very interesting